Assalamu alaikum guys, and welcome to another episode of the Last Days podcast. People are always banging on about we are approaching the last days. We're in the last days, so we took it upon ourselves to help equip the ummah regarding the pertinent topics to help us traverse these last days. Alhamdulillah, the gentlemen are back. Me and Khalid, we held the fort.
We did
last
indeed.
week, alhamdulillah.
Represented.
And alhamdulillah, the podcast has been doing well. But one of the most pertinent topics, I think, given what's happened in the last week and what's happened in the last couple of years, definitely is masculinity. What does it mean to be a man? Toxic masculinity, be a man. What is a rajula? What is a man? Is it a woman? Is it somebody who identifies as a man?
What, a guy in a dress who calls himself a woman is a woman?
Apparently, according to 21st century logic.
Good grief.
What I mean by it's prevalent or it's relevant based on this week is Wednesday. This past Wednesday was actually International Men's Day.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
missed that.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that. It's not like Mother's Day or Valentine's Day. It's just Men's Day.
What were we supposed to do as men on that day? We'd just be very masculine, were we, or something?
No, just be men. It's a day to appreciate
Okay.
men.
Okay.
But it's just so, just men. Like, who cares about men? And that's exactly how the day went. People don't even know. It came and went, and there was no significance to it. And that's how, ironically, a lot of men feel.
Yeah.
Unwanted, unloved, angry. So, yeah, inshallah, the thing is that this is a disclaimer that I wanted to give as well. We're speaking from the UK. Yeah, in the UK, we have our own issues. We have our own kind of perspectives that we want to tackle it from. You might be in a different country and you might be going through a different issue. Not all men are the same. Not everybody has gone through what they've gone through. So understand that if you want bespoke advice, go to a person of knowledge that's got knowledge of Islam and of course the secular aspect. That's somebody that can give you a bespoke advice. We will give case studies, we'll talk about certain issues. It may or may not be relevant to you. The way I was planning to divide this up is in the three kind of main categories of the physical aspect of what it means to be a man, issues people are going through or whatnot, the mental aspect, and then, of course, the spiritual aspect. We're going to talk a bit about red pill, a bit about green pill. We're going to talk about Hollywood and toxic masculinity. And then we're obviously going to talk about the interfaith aspect of it and why some people are even distancing themselves from the 21st century and, reading older novels and the likes. And why is this happening? And what is creating this distance? So firstly, it's just some opening thoughts about just masculinity in general in the last couple of years, what maybe we've observed, and then we just go around and then we'll jump into it. Khalid, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I think it's a really big subject and it can take many different faces. Now, I grew up in the 80s and there was a real focus on almost hyper-masculinity, but more masculinity with purpose, masculinity with morals, masculinity with ethics. So I mentioned last week the kind of cartoons that I used to watch growing up. So you would watch cartoons like He-Man, for example, or Thundercats or Transformers or whatever it might be. But what was really interesting is you had very clear distinctions between the masculine and the feminine. Many times they would come together as well, and there would be a very strong female protagonist, very strong male protagonist. But what was really interesting, at the end of each episode, even the A-Team, for example, there would always be a moral that they would share with the audience. Like, in this episode, we learned that such and such was suffering with this, and this is how we helped them. And so it really allowed people who were watching it, it enriched them with this sense of wanting to look like those characters on screen, these sort of larger than life type of characters, as well as have that chivalrous nature about them as well. And I think there has been a steep decline in that over the years. And so I'll share that for now. I think that's an interesting way to start for me.
So in your experience in the last couple of years, what have you seen about masculinity?
What have I seen? I've seen a shift, man, because it seems to be like how the world is moving at the moment. And it's not just, it's something which I've just observed more so recently is a very strong effort as if to, do I use the word discredit masculinity? Like it's toxic to be a man. If you hold certain male traits and you hold on to those strongly, they say that, oh, that's toxic masculinity. I think that we've blurred the boundaries a little bit. Like if you're, call it traditional, I don't know, what word am I looking for? I don't even know. But I'm just seeing this like a constant attack. You get me? Like we have to be a certain way now because, it's not, you have to be apologetic for being masculine. You know what I'm saying? But I've seen a shift, definitely. And I grew up in the 80s too, bro, so I hear what you're saying. And what was your favorite Thundercat?
It was actually Panthro.
Bro, Lionel all the way, yeah? You know what I'm saying? But back to business.
What the hell are these guys
Don't
bringing
worry,
up, bro? What the hell is
Guys, you grew up in the wrong era, man, believe me.
Paul, do you know what we're talking about?
I do, but I didn't have a favourite. I wasn't that, focused. No.
Cool. Okay, fair enough. But on a level though, back to the thingy is that I being that young, I don't recall those messages because I was only looking at the kind of the battles and the fights, and I was always rooting for He-Man versus the Skeletor, exactly. But being more conscious now, definitely I see there's a shift, and it's like you have to be apologetic for being a man. So that's something which I've observed.
Paul, yourself?
Yeah, something I want to go into more detail later is the feminization of masculinity, particularly the feminization of Christianity, actually, the way that the feminine now dominates many of our churches. The Church of England, for example, has a new Archbishop of Canterbury who is a woman. I mean, a real woman, not like a man dressed as a woman, but an actual woman. And this has been like, the response to that has been underwhelming. People have not exactly been applauding this. But to talk about why the church has been feminized and what that means for Christians and the threat, obviously, that poses to us as Muslims, the call to feminize us. But Islam seems to have a very robust DNA. Well, actually, to be honest, the Sunnah of the Prophet, upon him be peace, and so on. We seem to be pretty immune to that, but still, it's a threat, I think.
And I'd probably end with saying, you can't avoid the fact that the most Googled man on the planet was Andrew Tate. And Andrew Tate was the one that brought, I would say, arguably, masculinity to the fore. Yeah, everybody was discussing it, from imams, from people. You had mainstream media jumping into it. You had kids in schools talking about it. I mean, teachers were being warned against children that were talking about Andrew Tate. He was very popular, and then eventually he accepted Islam. So because of that, it's definitely created a shift. Yeah, so that's, alhamdulillah, a overview. So let's first discuss about what it means to be masculine according to secular liberalism, Andrew Tate, the Red Pill movement, how Red Pill is made to seem now. How masculinity is made to seem now. Let's start with Khalid.
I'm going to try my best to be as contained as possible. This is quite a visceral subject for me when I think about what Red Pill represents and the way that they have portrayed masculinity and how young men have inherited that. I think it's a real distortion on the masculine frame, and therefore I feel lots of things need to change in regards to it. So
I think you're just jealous because you don't have a Bugatti.
No, I'm not. I really am.
You're just hating on men, bro. You just want them to be incels, don't you?
No, absolutely not. I want them to be.
Define incel first, bro.
No,
incel is somebody that stays at home, that doesn't particularly feel empowered. They feel angry, distanced, estranged.
I kind of agree with that. Sorry, just to jump. Go on, carry on.
Yeah, I mean...
You ain't got a Bugatti, what are you saying?
Yeah, but none of that impresses me, because I look at Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajhah, for example, where his dowry was just a shield that was borrowed. And he was one of the greatest men to ever walk this earth, And so that's my example of masculinity. When I look at the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, they are my example of masculinity, and hence why I call it a distortion, because the whole Andrew Tate thing, he gave a voice to the voiceless.
Yes,
but what he did was he actually spoke to the inadequacies of men by showing them material gains, things like Bugattis, things like fighting, things like gym, sitting topless and presenting himself on podcasts, etc. I've got nothing against the man, all right?
You like men sitting topless?
No, I think I'll leave that with you, Zishan.
Bro, why are you moving fruity for so early? Let him finish, man.
He's not talking about topless men.
No, but for example, he's doing all of this. Then the women, for example. So you're speaking to the male's lower self. You're speaking to that lower part of the nafs. You're not speaking to the higher, more actualized male, the more masculine frame that Islam is promoting for you. And so why I felt slightly uncomfortable with the conversion to Islam, and I pray that Allah keeps him guided and allows him to benefit from his Islam. But meaning we can't now apply a framework that we have developed from a secular mindset through a movement that has been developed as an antithesis to feminism and then apply that to the Prophet ﷺ. Absolutely not.
So what sort of things do they regard as masculine?
So things like, having a plethora of women, for example, having lots of money to be able to spend.
What's wrong with that?
What's right with that?
Well, are we allowed to have 4 wives?
Yeah, but what's right with that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clear in the Quran. He says to us, he goes, marry one unless you can be just with all 4. And I don't want to be that man on the day of Qiyamah that walks with a limp and everyone sees me walking with a limp because I was unjust with my females. And then stand in front of my Prophet ﷺ, who said to me that be gentle with the fragile ones, that the best of you are the best to their women. And I have to stand in front of him with that limp, with him, salawatu rabbi salamun alayhi, knowing that what I've done, la ilaha illallah.
So I think there's a distinction here where we say that we're committed to 4 women. They say that have multiple women and you're just walking or working your way through them.
You're having multiple women without justice, without care, without compassion, without seeing the woman for what she is, without seeing the beauty that Allah has put manifest in her.
And
That's what troubles me.
What's the psychology behind trying to get loads of women? Like what are they trying to achieve with that?
It's the sign of the conqueror, isn't it? This has always been something. Where are my prizes? Where is my gain? Where is my booty? Where is my, pardon the pun.
The booty is there.
Yeah, I knew you were going. As I said it, I knew this guy was going to jump on this.
Yeah.
But, meaning war booty, like ghanima.
Spoils of war.
Spoils of war, let's use that. Like, it's much more apt, especially for him.
Yeah, sorry guys.
So, yeah.
It's a reflex.
Yeah. So meaning the man has always had this sense of entitlement, which is, where are my just desserts for my efforts, for my conquering efforts? And it's always been celebrated, whether you're a gladiator in the Colosseum, whether you're a superstar. Part of the appeal is I will receive from this adulation.
Sheikh, how do you see masculinity being perceived by non-Muslims and secular liberalism?
How do I see it through my Islamic lens looking at them?
Yeah, so living in the West, when they talk about masculinity, how are they defining masculinity from a non-Muslim lens? So Khalid's talked about the material aspect, like they go through getting a Bugatti, women. So what else?
I would agree with everything he said. So up and what he said. The only thing I'd probably add to that is historically, masculinity was looked at people that would stand up for women's rights. Be ready to be rough and tough when the time needed, fight if necessary, defend, you get me? So I think these are honorable traits a man can and should have. But going back to what my man Khalid just said now, and that is, for us as a Muslim, the reason why we find this a little bit uncomfortable is the kind of version that is being kind of spewed out there is because, for me, look, straight up, my Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the best role model for all of mankind. He had a balance in all areas. For example, on the funeral of Osman ibn Mad'un, for example, the Rawi mentioned that he kissed him when he was on his deathbed and then was shedding tears. And the Rawi said, I see his eyes fill up with tears. How he was soft with the child, soft with the orphan. But yet there was a time when there was this mad thunderous clap in Medina and the Prophet ﷺ, I can't remember which Sahabi it was, Wallahu alam, it might have been, let's not quote the Sahabi, but he goes dashing out on the horse by himself, attending this noise. And he came back, obviously, no saddle, sword around his neck. So that's our man. But you see what it is, he was balanced. And he didn't teach us to, again, going back to that thing about conquering women, unfortunately, that's what masculinity has. So you're masculine if you're spreading seed left, right, and center. And I would be like, to put it frankly, so you're busting nuts, you're basically a masculine man. That's crude.
I'm not going to translate that for you, Paul, yeah?
You're very kind.
Put it this way, it's nuts. I know,
no pun intended.
No pun intended again.
Before he jumps.
So we've gone to booty and nuts now. I know what's coming next.
No,
I'm free from this.
Yeah. Up until now, anyway. Yeah. Forget me, bro. Anyway, but seriously, I think, look, masculinity, I mean, historically has always, people have appreciated men. I'm going to throw in a bit of a curveball here and say that, and I mean no disrespect, but if a house was on fire, and even in the modern day, you had like a dozen or so people turn up. If they were men and they looked physically strong, you'd feel a sense of calm and ease. I don't know if that would be, I'm not saying it wouldn't, but would it be reciprocated the same way if 12 women rolled up? I'm going to ask that as a question, not making a claim. So even in people's minds now, there's still that thing that, there's certain jobs men can and should or would prefer for them to do. So from a secular lens, I think I'd agree with what you said. It's now seen as though materialism, spreading women, as I mentioned, busing, this and that. And I think that's kind of what it's kind of morphed into. Our Islamic understanding is contrary to that.
Yeah.
Completely.
Paul, when we were speaking off camera, you said you like reading books from a certain time period. Do you just want to elaborate on, because I like that point, even though we didn't really elaborate on it, but it ties in well with today's episode because of the reason that you gave for that.
That's a really good point, actually. At the moment, I'm reading a book called War and Peace by Tolstoy, who lived in the... Oh, thank you. That's all right. 19th century. Yeah. Can you hear me, everyone? And one of the things I like, Tolstoy writes about life, and he writes it just, as if it's life itself. He's absolute genius when it comes to drama, people, psychology, war, strategy, everything. But what I also like about it is I know I'm not going to encounter wokeism in these books. Men are men and women are women. Men fight the wars, women look after the children, but women are intelligent in his books, that they're not kind of caricatures of very bad kind of feminine personalities. No, they're real. They're intelligent. They're schemers. They're often very talented. But there are these clear roles, and so one doesn't have to worry about being kind of subtly brainwashed by this kind of secular feminism. And same with Dickens and Dostoevsky and even Jane Austen and George Eliot, all these amazing novelists in the 19th century, Thackeray, go on and on and on. They're sufficiently modern for us to be able just to read them and understand them, but they predate the 1960s or even the 1930s. So I feel as if I'm in a safe zone. I'm not going to be brainwashed by this stuff. And also there's a Christian ethos, which at that time was actually quite compatible with a lot of Islamic ethos. It's not exactly the same, but it's broadly similar. It's again a safe zone, if you like. We're not going to be undermined morally in reading this stuff. So that's
It actually reminds me, because there were some people that were complaining about Harry Potter. They were saying that you've got the books of Harry Potter in which Ron Weasley is a brave kid. Yeah, he's somebody that speaks out. He's not a whimpering weasel. However, in the movie, his brave lines get given to Hermione. And people that don't read, they are of the impression that this sidekick of Harry is weak, pathetic, emasculated figure that's just on the side. And Hermione is given all of these brave lines and she's kind of put forward. But that goes against the very message of what the author intended. And that's what people are now discussing when this new series comes out. Is it really going to reflect the book? Well, who knows? But again, it ties to this fact that books are now at the mercy of directors. They get to pick what they want to give airtime to and what they want to emphasize.
I confess, I've not read Harry Potter. I mean, in my naivety, I thought this is a books for kids. I'm not a kid. I want to read adult books. Maybe that's all wrong. I don't know. But from what I've seen from the movies, it's to do with these guys involved in witchcraft and magic and spells and whatnot. All this is haram stuff. It's haram for Christians and for Muslims as well. And we're reading it and we're kind of sympathizing with these witches and wizards and whatnot. Excuse me. But in the books from the 19th century and before, no one is celebrating witchcraft and there are no wizards, anything like that. So another reason why we become accustomed and at ease with witchcraft, and it's in our movies, in our children's books, and we don't protest against it. Well, I didn't see that happening. Really? Why are we not protesting? Why are we not warning about this? It's just become part of the cultural air we breathe. I think that's problematic.
And a lot of people are noticing that they're rebooting a lot of the classics. Yeah, like you had Star Trek, in which you had, Picard, who was the leader. He was masculine. He was stoic. He was responsible.
Not anymore.
Now they've made him a shell of a man. An old individual is weak and he makes mistakes and this and even 007. Yeah, they had Craig. Was Daniel Craig. Then they were showing him in homosexual bars and with nail paint and all of these things.
So the new James Bond.
Yeah, they haven't picked the new one, but the one that's just finished, Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
And then even they're taking rappers. Drake's got nail paint on him. Skepta was seen in a skirt. Like what the hell is going on? And we're seeing this so much, and that's why you've echoed this with your books. A lot of people are even echoing it with movies, that you want to look at the James Bond, the old Sean Connery ones. I'm not saying I agree with this, but there's an interview.
Because the Sean Connery there, he used to sleep with women all over the place. Women were disposable. There were crude sexual jokes. I won't even say the names of some of the women he slept with because they're very rhubards. This is the red pill issue, isn't it? Such an extreme reaction against feminism. We end up having this toxic masculinity, which he has been accused of. The old James Bond, I mean. But I would argue rightly. And then the new one is even worse because he's turned into sort of a feminized James Bond. They have to take these strong male figures and they have to water them down. Venom, people saw the first one and they were like, he's strong, he's very carnivorous, beast-like. Second one, he's on stage singing about his feelings.
Is it? Oh, I haven't seen it.
That's why even the new Joker, the first one, very interesting. It's kind of touching people's dark side and that neglected side. And then now he's with Lady Gaga and it's a musical. And it got like 5.5 on IMDb. Like, it's pathetic. So they are definitely, and they're trying to put Black Widow, Captain Marvel, all these strong women characters, putting them forward. So there definitely is that going on. But Paul, how is masculinity seen in the Bible?
In the what?
In the Bible.
The Bible? Oh, the Bible.
The Bible.
Sorry, my whatever that language was is not very good. Well, men are men and women are women in the Bible. There isn't really feminism in the Bible.
Would you say Jesus is he's a masculine figure?
Well, that's a good question. And if I may, I'd like to share with you a few paragraphs from the book, which I think is quite relevant. I know we're going to come to this later, but this is the book I really recommend for people. It's called Commentary on the 11th Contentions. Not a great title. What does that mean even? But anyway, the author is someone called Tim Winter, otherwise known as Abdul Hakim Murad. He's a Muslim revert, professor at Cambridge University. And this is a bunch of essays that he wrote. And the 37th commentary on the 11th Contentions is about the way Jesus is portrayed in the Gospels, interestingly, and his view on that. And this kind of ties in with how the church has reinterpreted the way Jesus is imaged in the Gospels to a quite different Jesus. And I'm not saying we should agree with either portrayal, but he says this. Few people are untroubled by the fact that the gospel authors present Jesus as an apolitical pacifist. This is how Jesus is portrayed. Nowhere do they point out that his country was under a brutal military occupation, which ruled by torture, mass execution, expropriation, and the abolition of divine law. Instead, Galilee is generally presented as a peaceful, benign, sunlit land populated by mild centurions and subject only to the occasional tax-gathering annoyances. Jesus curses Jewish scribes in Matthew 23, but is presented as indifferent to Roman excesses. This is true. While some Jews felt obliged to condemn the occupation, the gospel authors, this is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, claim that he simply said, "Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's." It's very kind of lame. Well, let them have their power. The pacifism is unmistakable and striking. Jesus is presented as saying, "All those that live by the sword shall die by the sword." And also, even resist not him that is evil. Don't resist evil people. Don't resist. This is Matthew chapter 5. Chapter 5, verse 39. For the first 2 centuries, Christians duly renounced the use of force and refused to serve in armies. They were pacifists. They followed this teaching. This early teaching was then progressively abandoned in favor of theories of just war. It's developed by people like Augustine and Thomas Aquinas much later on. And in this, evolved Christianity developed a fiqh and an ethic strongly reminiscent of Islamic equivalents. So Christianity did go on to develop ideas of just war. You can only go to war if there's a just reason. You just can't kill people randomly. Can this be explained, asked Tim Winter? Were the pacifists hearing him incorrectly? Unearthing the actual beliefs of the historical Jesus is famously hard. Biblical scholars try and do this because the gospel portraits are often not accurate. So they're trying to uncover the real Jesus. Yeah. Albert Schweitzer, the famous biblical scholar, thought that those who try simply end up remaking him in their own image. So they create an image of Jesus, which is really an image of themselves. So you get these many different projections. It's very, very common in New Testament scholarship. And early Christian biographers certainly had an interest in deleting the memory of any opposition to Rome. So Luke, for example, wants to ingratiate himself, the Gospel of Luke, the author, ingratiate himself with the Roman Empire. Hey, we're friendly to you Romans. Even our Jesus was a pacifist, you see. So he has an interest in deleting any memory of any opposition Jesus may have had to Rome. But Muslims hold that as a sign of moral perfection, Jesus cannot have been silent about the evils of Roman occupation, nor could he have taught the pacifism that most churches eventually recognized as unethical. The churches don't follow this alleged teaching of Jesus. They teach just war, like Augustine formulated, like Thomas Aquinas formulated. Now, Tim Winter concludes, demonstrating this as historical fact, however, is probably beyond our power, because we don't have access, at least historically, to the real Jesus, apart from the Quran, I mean. We don't have that kind of access. So he talks... Tim Winter brilliantly talks there about a Jesus who just has no real strong masculine stature. He doesn't resist evil. He doesn't protest against the occupying powers. He doesn't protest against torture and occupation and expropriation. Yeah, but even the church can't accept that and has added its own layer, which is actually very Islamic. Interesting.
So where did the church make a shift to being like crusaders, where they went all out on, like frankly, in some instances, killing sprees? So would that come under the banner of being a just war? Because that was indiscriminate killing in some instances.
That's something else. That's not a just war. But the just war theory was developed in the 5th century by St. Augustine, as I say, the beginning of the Middle Ages. And that's quite Islamic, because you have the sense of judging when it isn't appropriate to go to war. In self-defense, yes, and so on. But that's not in the Gospels. So the church knew better than that portrayal of Jesus, and ended up teaching something that was actually quite similar to Islam. And then Islam comes along and actually teaches it from Revelation. And that's the genuine answer.
My question was that if they find that if they reassessed Aquinas' and Augustine's position and redeveloped another version where they said, we believed in just war, but now we believe in all-out anarchy.
That's something else. The Crusades
that was my question. I wasn't questioning the just war thing, but whether it kind of developed over the 5 centuries when it got to Pope Urban II, and they said, now it's all out. We got to go to war.
The church didn't live up to its own teachings.
Just coming. It's interesting that you said that often the gospel writers not the gospel writers, the church scholars, etc., would often use their own interpretation of their own construct and apply it onto the character of Jesus. It's interesting because I was almost doing the same thing whilst I was listening to you and applying the Islamic frame to it, which is, I see Jesus, alayhi salam, as someone who is extremely brave, extremely forthcoming. He was quite ferocious when he needed to be, like when he was exorcising demons, for example. There was some real physical movement going on there.
True.
And then the fact that he would go to the center of this, conquered land by a world superpower and decide to walk into the temple and do what he did. It's, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. You have to be charged by something higher than yourself. And a lot of prophets, you notice, do this.
Yeah, straight up.
And so I see a very strong, emboldened prophet. I don't see a pacifist. And it's strange. Maybe I interpret that using an Islamic frame, potentially. My own construct.
Before we get on to the Islamic depiction of masculinity that people are actually waiting for, we still have to tie up a few other gaps or a few other points that this secular form of masculinity actually gave us. So we discussed I think material things like cars, women, Another thing is there is extreme focus on gathering of wealth. Yeah. Yes, there is pros and cons, but so far we're just going to talk about what they've said, which is amassing as much wealth as possible, being something called a high value man, and then being somebody that's well built. You mentioned this with the shirtless kind of scenario, like you're only going to be shirtless if you're proud of your body. And there are certain people that have now interpreted that, and they just live in the gym, and they believe that that's masculinity. You can be as dumb as a dodo, but as long as you've got, you know, muscles coming out of your nostrils, like you're good to
Muscles
go.
coming. Is this an original thing by you? Is that? I've never heard of muscles coming out of your nostrils before.
I've been popping
I
it
hate to see
everywhere.
that. That would look messy, man.
Disgusting.
It's a
image.
six-pack of the right nostril. So then, now here's the thing. A lot of people, a lot of kids gravitated to that. Yeah. Now the question is, why? Yeah. Why were so many people gravitating towards that rather than, say, the imam on the pulpit or the guy managing the youth club or particular Muslim influencers? Why did the kids feel so drawn towards that? You mentioned because they're appealing to one's lower self.
Yeah.
But I would also argue, and I'm going to put this out there, is that, and again, this, a lot of people tend to blame the imams, yeah? And then maybe you could jump in.
Yeah, sure.
And unfairly so. And now here's the thing. They say, oh, imams, you know, and there are certain stereotypes. So they eat halwa, you know, they're very large. They don't talk about this, and they talk about a very kind of feminist, feminine, placid view of Islam. But here's the thing that I wanted to add, which is a context that we're living in a post 9/11 era. Yeah. And in this post 9/11 era, Islam came under the microscope. Yeah. Like anything remotely Islamic was seen as, oh my God, it's aggressive, warlike. So then, according to my understanding, the ulama went to the other side. Oh, Islam is peace. Look, this is what we believe, and this is this. So anytime you go to one extreme whilst excluding the other, then it causes issues, and people don't like that because the deen is wasat. It's in the middle. It's the middle part. So now when you speak to the kids, they're complaining, oh, the imam's always talking about, oh, if the wife says this, you must obey, do this. And even prominent imams and influencers, without mentioning any names, they're on stage.
Oh, go on, mention some names.
Can I mention names?
Yeah.
Okay, Mufti Khalid.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. So there's a Mufti, there's an individual.
Names,
of course not. So there are individuals that are saying, look, if my wife told me to do this and I'm on stage, I would do this. Yeah, even if it didn't make sense. Now that compounds the problem where people are feeling the imams aren't talking about this. Now you've got certain Muslim influencers or whatnot, again, cowering to women. And here in the West now, 80% of divorces are instigated by women. You've got the feminist movement. There's peer-reviewed evidence on this.
Wow.
And of course, with the rise of feminism, and when it comes to men's rights, even if you're a civil partnership, you're living together, she can take half the house, she can get the kids, you know. Even if she accuses you of something to the police, they have to come and arrest you, put you in a cell. Brothers are literally running from pillar to post to get access to their kids. So I would argue that based on all of these things, the red pill came at a time that men were like, okay, finally, something for us. So putting it out there, why do you guys think this gap was there? Yeah, what theories do you guys have?
Look, I'll jump in on something because you mentioned something about imams as well. Maybe I can chime in on this a little bit. Firstly, look, some of these influences that are talking about red pill and this and that. Firstly, this started quite some long time ago. I mean, some of the key figures. I don't know if you heard of Rollo Tomasi. So these are some of the names I don't agree with my man stuff, but I'm just putting it out there that these were kind of ideas that, if you really want to go back even further, everyone knows the Matrix analogy, blue, red, and so on, right? Bun that. But let's come back to the topic. Why was the draw? Why did people get drawn to it? Why were some people drawn to it? Look, your nafs is going to desire things which are haram, standard. Yeah, let's look at what they were offering. Bro, they had semi-clad nude women sitting around them, tings hanging out. Who ain't going to be attracted to that? let's be real, yeah. On some of these podcasts where mum and them, they came on and started representing themselves, bro, you got half naked women there. Which man is not going to be attracted to that?
Yeah.
So you're seen as to be this powerful figure and amongst all these women. So already your nafs is inclined towards that. You by nature, you're already inclined towards shar and evil anyway. Number one. Number two, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned actually in the hadith, he mentioned that the biggest fitna I leave behind for my ummah are women. And then another one, he mentioned that money. Both of these things that they're doing.
Yeah.
Right now they're showing that I've got a Bugatti, I've got a house here, and I'm rolling like
So
this.
what is a Bugatti?
It's a model of a car, which is quite expensive.
It used to be the fastest roadworthy car on the planet.
Yeah.
But what's the point of having a really fast car if you're driving in London where the speed limit is 20 miles an hour? I mean, what's the point? You might as well have a Mini. I don't get it. Sorry,
Yeah, absolutely no. So what it is that was naturally what they were presenting. They were presenting things of money, they were presenting things of power, they were presenting things of women. Naturally, we as men, whether we want to admit this or not, we would like to have some of that. You get me? A man who would not like to be surrounded, bro, some of them women there, a proper buff, you get me? They're not clapped out butt as women.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, you
you're
get
right.
me? So these are proper strikingly hot women.
Paul, he's referring to Margarine.
Right, I thought he was.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here now, okay, so already your nafs is inclined towards that anyway. Your nafs is inclined towards the wealth side of things. And then there's the inadequacy feeling that I'm a waste man, I'm not getting nowhere in life, I'm literally clapped and butters and I'm not going nowhere. Someone tells you, be a man, be like this, and you think that's the antidote to your problem. You're then driving down a rabbit hole of going down a thing of materialism until there's never going to be, when are you going to be satisfied?
Why weren't imams talking about these issues?
I disagree. Listen, imams have always spoken about key figures. Umar radiallahu anhu, Khalid ibn Walid, Hamza radiallahu anhu, all these key figures. We don't want to hear that. Who wants to know that these were people that literally went out, Dhatul Riqa, and they literally walked in the deserts for so long that Sahaba, their nails peeled off their feet. They had to literally tie their feet with cloth. That's mujahada. That's a man. That's a warrior there.
But that's to do with war, isn't it?
Doesn't matter. It's still masculine.
Somebody living in a concrete jungle.
It's still masculine.
We don't
You're
relate
saying,
to
is
that.
that masculine? Yeah, but what sort of man? So what do you want me to say then? Okay, you can have 4 wives. Is that the only masculine thing we've got?
No, what I'm saying is that they gave solutions. People were not.
No, I don't think solutions.
I'll tell you what I mean. You had people that were stuck at home gaming, incels, because there's only 30% of men that are going around, and 70% of men haven't had intercourse with a woman, haven't been in a relationship, and those men are becoming furious. They're they've got this pent up anger and frustration.
From probably watching too much OnlyFans and porn.
As well. and lack of confidence as well. And frankly, going to the masjid and saying, "Oh, Islam is peace," and you know what, just be humble and be this.
Let me jump in on
and
that.
then every now and then there's a story about Sahaba that were in the battlefield. I mean, you can't blame the people for going, you know what, it doesn't really help me in my day-to-day life. Like, how do I become more empowered? How do I become more masculine? They want dedicated programs to that, as much as I would argue there are now. There are weekend retreats that help brothers, do archery, horseback riding, talking about real masculinity that's derived from the prophetic sunnah that wasn't there before. And I'm saying, why? Why wasn't it there? One theory that I had was, post 9/11, people were, trying to make Islam seem like this passive force.
Tolerable or palatable. More for the Western audience.
What other reasons could it be for the imams that weren't maybe subject to the whole post 9/11 thing? What were their reasons, do you think, that maybe they weren't doing it?
I do believe, now don't get me wrong, I mean, for this disclaimer, I'm not an imam. I haven't been imam since 2011. So I am not an imam in any capacity. I was very privileged to serve a community for a couple of years. I just weren't cut out to be Maulvi material, Rev. So I had to do something else. But I have a lot of respect for ulama. But the thing is, I will definitely say this, and that is when there are some shortcomings, especially in being able to contextualize Islamic knowledge based on modern day understanding. Giving solution-focused answers in relation to queries that come in light of the seerah and so on, which is so rich. Now, if you're talking about, so let's really break down some of their key arguments. If you're talking about being a man and a fighter and warrior, I disagree. That is something purely in our tradition. A stronger believer is more like than a weaker believer.
We're not going to solutions yet.
No, I'm saying let's break down the masculine argument, because I'm saying that what is the allure in these people? So it's the masculine side, then it's money, and then it's having loads of women, and then is there anything else we'd chuck in there really? So the things that
working
they're
on your
offering,
body, being strong, being able to defend yourself.
working on your body, I agree with that.
And,
there is a
and they
stereotype.
say being financially free, being independent, being a high value
But
man.
being financially
Don't
free-
chase women, let them chase
Bro,
you.
there's financially free, and then there's having people saying I own 15 million a year. Like in the last
Voice of
quarter, I own
experience.
6 million quid. You know, how much is enough? Do you get me? I mean, realistically, how much is enough? Being financially free is one thing, but they were bragging about taking first class flights to, for example, Dubai, which is nothing wrong with that. If you've got the dough, do it. But it's what are they actually offering? I'm not, again, look, let's go. I think there's two things we're running side by side. So let's tackle the Maulvi thing first. So the ulama definitely have fallen short in some areas. I agree with that. Not being able to contextualize Islamic knowledge based on current issues that are rising and providing solution-focused answers for problems that are generated by their musallis and their congregation. Do I think that there needs to be an answer? Okay, so how would you answer from an Islamic lens that, you know, that appeal to the nafs of being around loads of women, whereas we're not even told to even shake a hand with a woman, and that is actually more stronger opinion that you won't even physically touch. I know there's some nuances and difference of opinion, but we're not going to go into the nuances. The more dominant view is that you won't even shake a hand of a woman. Here a man sitting on podcast, bro, and things hanging out all over the place. Like, what is the antidote to that? How we're saying, brothers, keep your gazes down. You know, they're saying, bro, Andrew Tate and next man are talking.
No, but that I don't think that's a solution. When a lot of brothers, they spend most of their lives with their gazes down, being very cautious. They don't know how to speak to a woman.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Then when they can't get married, their parents tell them, "Oh, now you have to look for rishta." The guy goes, "You know what? I'm not used to speaking to women. I've been told my whole life to distance myself from them, and now suddenly I have to have game. And yes, do it within Sharia, like approach them, get their father's number, this, that. But you can't just take a person from zero to hero. You can't just flick a switch. So that's what I'm saying. There's lack of commentary on these things of keep the gaze low. Don't.
No, that's my point.
There's
That's my point.
Yeah,
contextualization. It's contextualized.
Yeah, there's a segregation. Like you're not going to speak to women. No, there will be times that you will have to speak to women.
Absolutely.
We need to teach our youngsters.
Absolutely.
That the bar is not you need to have 10 women with their bits and bobs hanging out, but it's that when you are with a woman, how do you get
How do you carry yourself?
Yeah, how do you how do you inculcate chivalry? How do you inculcate somebody that is in control of the situation, that imbues confidence, that woman says, you know what, this is a man that I could actually trust with my life and the lives of my children. It's these things that I felt absolutely have not been discussed. And inshallah, we're going to do that today. But to find out why, because only when we've understood why things haven't been discussed, then we can actually learn from it. But when we just kind of say, oh, you know what, those guys are like this, we're free from that. That's where I feel like there's a bit of a sleight of hand.
Sure. Okay. So rather than going off on the tangent, let's focus on a key why. One, definitely the contextualization perhaps wasn't always best there. It was just mentioned in passing without any sort of applicability of today, and not being able to provide solution-focused problems for people's solutions for problems. There is a third thing, and I think you're actually quite right. I'd agree with that. I think a lot of people were kind of shook after the 9/11, 7/7 thing, that if I mention the word jihad, for example, even though it's within a context, I may risk going to Cuba, bruv.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were kind of, maybe, I don't know.
Even the people that mentioned jihad, it was like, the greater jihad is the fight against the nafs.
Yeah.
Against one's desire.
Well, we don't even have to talk about jihad.
No, you don't have to. Exactly.
No, as in,
you don't have to.
Why is it when we talk about masculinity, we just start talking about harb and war,
Yeah,
and all of this kind of stuff.
With you.
And look at the Prophet Ali sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look how beautiful this was here. Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, and I keep referencing, he's my favorite Sahaba, that's why I keep referencing him. For example, when Sayyidina Hassan was born.
My favorite Sahaba is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu.
Okay, mashallah. See, this is good. So, for example, when Sayyidina Hassan was born, all right, Sayyidina Ali wanted to call him harb. Wanted to call him war, right? And the Prophet ﷺ came, he goes, no. Because Hadil Hassan, he's good. He's good. Name him good. And you see, so it's not always about war. And what does goodness bring? Goodness brings the potential to be of service to other human beings. The problem is we have lack of purpose. Buying cars, having women, and all of this.
That's my point.
It's all about lack of purpose, bro. Look at, and if you look into the Quran, for example, there are ample evidences for this. For example, the person who is sat at home doesn't want to do anything. The person who's maybe fearful of going out and claiming their purpose. For example, Ya ayyuhal mudaththir kum fa'anzir. Allah is saying, you wrapped up in that blanket, salawatu rabbi salamun alayh, get up, rise, go and warn the people, because that's your job. Al-mubashir wa nadhir, you're the one to give glad. So for example, he goes, get up, do the work that I've charged you to do. For example, Musa alayhi salam, same thing, he's gone up there, Allah says, la takhaf. Don't be scared. He's just put a snake in front of him. Because don't be scared, pick it up. You now need to go to the Firaun, which is like telling a Bedouin from like a farm hand, for example, you got to go to conquer Donald Trump tomorrow. Well, I'm not going there. What do you mean go there? Allah is saying, I have a mission for you. If you believe in the mission that I'm giving you, all of us, right? Not because they're prophets, all of us, if you know your mission, which is to be of service to other human beings, Allah says, Ana hadir, I'm with you. I'm there. Just go and I'll do the rest. Even to the point where, who is it that split the sea? Allah splits the sea for Musa alayhi salam. But he still says, put your staff in the water first. You have to do something. And what is a staff? It's nothing. And you're putting it in a huge ocean, that ocean splits, because you have to make the effort. When you make the effort, Allah says, I will change your condition. And the problem is we have looked at masculinity as material gains or status and think this is the representation of what it looks like to be a man. No.
And that's my point, Khalid. How is a Maulvi supposed to give an antidote to that, which is Nas related?
By making it relevant. By saying to yourself, you're scared to go out there and create your own business. You're scared to whatever it is. And
that's what we're
sexualization.
That's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna take all of their points and we're gonna talk. And obviously, me and Paul, our job is to grill you guys. Yeah,
we're gonna grill you too as well.
Yeah, because you guys are obviously you have your fields and you've been responsible for those fields for a very long time, and you've got expertise that people want to kind of really get into your heads. And obviously we've got that relationship that we can pick each other's brains. And obviously you guys can do it vice versa in our relative fields as well. So it's all, love, but we don't want to just have a friendly conversation and just not mention certain points. We want to really dig deep and ask the uncomfortable questions that the viewers have, because I don't know about you guys, but when I have conversations with people, these are genuine frustrations that they have. And the reason why they like our discussions is because we're really, getting to the nub of the issue. So now this is where we want to talk about, firstly, to round this up, the masculinity that is being depicted in the West through secular liberalism or whatever it is, it's man-centric. Yeah, that's what it is. The man is the center. Like women are taking over. No, the man needs to take over because it's the man. Like, you need to be happy. You need to do this. And as Hamza Sotsa said, it's not God-centric. And if you actually look at the rajula, which is masculinity, according to the ulama, many of them end up saying one's manhood is in one's character.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah. So that's how rajula and masculinity is defined by the likes of Nawawi, by the likes of all of our akabirin. That's what masculinity is. Now what we're going to do,
I would also add futuwa into that.
Absolutely.
So that's obviously there's different answers to that. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what masculinity means in Islam and how we can realign. Like, a lot of people have gained confidence from red pill. Maybe they've gone to extremes in certain things, but many people have felt motivated to start their own businesses, to work on themselves, to go to the gym that maybe they probably wouldn't have gotten from anywhere else. However, the question now arises, is that masculinity? Is masculinity just restricted to that? And if not, what is real masculinity? So let's first deal with the physical aspect. What is masculinity in terms of the physical aspect? So I'll start off and I'll say, look, they're not wrong when it comes to the gym. However, living in the gym and thinking that you now are, it's your masculinity is defined on your body. For example, I was on this one discussion, and when the guy asked me about masculinity, there was somebody else that was a bit jacked. He started laughing. Because me, I wasn't as, say, built as him. But I would say the same thing. Like, I would argue Paul is masculine. Yeah. Now, somebody watching might go, what is it? Look, I mean, he doesn't have tattoos. He's not jacked.
How do you know I don't have tattoos?
Well, it depends.
I actually don't really have tattoos.
Yeah. So the reason why I say that is because I go Speaker's Corner. And I've seen jacked up people really strong that can give it all that, go, bro, I can't do that. I don't know how you guys do it. And I've seen this guy there. I've seen myself there. I've seen brothers that go there, it's cold, and you got people following you, tormenting you, but you're in a conversation, cameras are flying about, and you're holding your own. You're able to recall conversation under pressure. You're able to articulate yourself. You're able to represent the religion. You don't crumble under pressure. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the physical aspect, a lot of people put people down. I would put maybe myself in there as well. I'm not exactly the most jacked person. You two are.
Yeah, all right. Moving on. Yeah.
So based on that, it actually reminds me of a waqia of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Yeah. When he was climbing the tree, and the Sahaba were shins, they were laughing at his thin shins. And the Prophet ﷺ said, paraphrasing here, said, what do you guys know? If his thin shins were to be put on one pan of the balance and Mount Uhud on the other, his thin shins would be heavier. Why? Because it was the blood that was coursing through those veins. It was the jazba, it was the motivation. It was what those thin shins were able to do. Many people with bigger shins were not able to do. And they say even with Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he wasn't a heavily built man, but he was fierce on the battlefield. Some of the harsh words came when Abu Bakr was defending the honor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So don't get me wrong. Look, being physically active and looking after yourself physically is important, and you just can't take this out of the equation. But to say that said person who's built, and people will just take steroids, you can take roids and 4 or 5 months and you're jacked. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a big thing. Do you see? So exercise is definitely there. And another thing is fighting. People believe that, no, I have to be harsh. I have to be angry. Like at home, I have to lay down the law. The kid does something, whoosh. That's not even the sword. That's the belt. The belt comes out. So pertaining these things, like, do you guys agree with me? Like, what's your additions?
Do you want to jump in first, or shall I?
Yeah, it's when I look at this, and I'll give you an experience. I worked as part of the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service at a pupil referral unit. This is like kids who have been suspended, excluded from school, one step away from prison, a lot of them. And some of the people would see their behavior and go, oh, they're unhinged, or they are, causing fights or causing ruckuses, etc. And I looked at them and I thought to myself, you know what? This is just unhealed men performing dominance just to hide their vulnerability. That's what this is. And when I look at these red pill type of
psychological compensation.
And I look at these red pill type of people, and it's just people who are performing masculinity. It's nothing to do with manhood. And so when I see that, it's a call then to understand, how do we heal those things which are creating this anger in us? What is it that we can do to help ourselves understand what our triggers are? Why does the belt come off? What is it that we're angry about that the child has done?
He's smoking, Khalid. He shouldn't be smoking.
But is a belt going to help him?
Absolutely.
I beg to differ.
He won't take a cigarette ever again.
Because what we have to understand is the child started smoking for a reason. Maybe he was unable to come to you as the father.
I was going
to be able to speak to you or to the mother. Were you neglecting that child? What is it that allowed that child to go into this?
I'm busy at work. I don't have time to be babysitting him.
You answered your own question.
Just take the belt out.
You're quick enough to basically make the baby. Why not make the time with the baby? You know what I'm saying?
And look at the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, even with this here, with Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, for example, where he's teaching the Sahaba. This is how you speak about something which you feel is a deficiency in someone's physical stature. This is how you speak about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, he's constantly teaching. The Prophet ﷺ, you talked about the Imam Nawawi, for example, saying that it's character, and the other, big mashayikh of our times. Why? Because Allah said it in the Quran that I've given you him who's got the best character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we have to look at that and we have to strip that open, because the Prophet ﷺ was a human being. We keep making these Sahaba and these characters like they're some mythical characters, like this is Perseus or Hercules we're speaking about. No, they're real human beings with real feelings that felt real emotions.
But Khalid, you know why we think that is because it's only the miraculous elements of the companions. Oh, he was there and he was able to defeat 100 people. It's those things that will be mentioned rather than the things that are actual day-to-day struggles that even they have.
But that's where we need to start reading the Quran, bro. Like, for example,
read the seerah.
Read the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, even like that, for example, why is Allah saying kun fa'anzir? He's saying get up. Why? What was the Prophet ﷺ doing that Allah now has to tell him, get up and do some work. I've got mission for you. Because sometimes in life, we're all human beings, we feel fear. We feel a lack of bravery. We have something where we need inspiration to pick us up. And when we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we learn all of this. And one of the...
So you're saying prophetic masculinity.
Prophetic masculinity is the antidote to all of this. You can read the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and look at the aspects of his life and apply it to yourself in this day and age. 100%. I guarantee you can pick any subject from today and the seerah will have an answer for you.
So he was a grandfather when he was at home. He was a father. He was a husband. But when he was on the battlefield, he was a warrior.
Well, I gave you that example about him, when there was that loud, thunderous noise in Medina, when the Sahaba were thinking, what's that noise? He'd already left out on someone else's horse and just darted out and said, right, let me go and tend to the noise. With a sword hung around his neck. That's chivalry, that's man.
And in Arab culture in those days, that means I'm on smoke. That's what that means. If it's round your neck, it means I'm looking to kill someone.
And by the way, I mean, if you really want to put it into a light of hadith, you want to talk about physicality, right? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. There's a beautiful hadith, actually you can come to this point here, and it's about, he said that a strong person is not one who can wrestle people, but a strong person is that person who can control themselves when they're angry. Self-control over your own nafs. And when you were talking about Speaker's Corner, that kind of was going through my mind at the time. It's that you're going to get someone that's going to come and say something dopey, just to trigger, man, you get me? But you can hold that and not be fazed by that. That is a sign of masculinity in Islam. That is a strong person. In addition to that, look, I'm going to be real. And although I'm on a journey of, alhamdulillah, self-improvement in terms of my own weight loss myself, bro, I was hitting 170 kilos, 169 point something at one point. I got a picture on my phone, but I dare to show it just in case man see the picture and I get violated. But the reality is...
Paul, don't violate when you see the picture.
Okay. Yeah. But you see, I'll be honest with you, someone actually said to me, and it was something that hit home, a few comments, but one in particular, he said, look, we look up to you as being our leader. But yet when we look at you, you look at someone as, mashallah, you can't even see your toes. And I thought, wallahi, that's true, man. And the Prophet mentioned sawa'ul batni was sadr. That's what it mentions in the Shama'il. His stomach and chest were in line. So he wasn't this, I knew, it was Umar radiallahu anhu. He saw someone whose stomach sticked out and he said, what's this? He goes, it's barakah. He goes, this ain't barakah. This is a punishment. So don't get me wrong. And all right, now you may ask, what are the reasons why then I didn't fix up? The truth is, good wife, great cooking, and then that fear of going to the gym because someone may see me and say, astaghfirullah, what are you doing in the gym, fam? So because of that little bit of self-neglect, I didn't want to be seen in my Gymshark clothes around. Bun them people, because they're the same people that would never even attend your janazah when you're dead anyway. So I had to obviously fix up myself. But back to the point, masculinity in terms of physical, I do believe a man should be physically strong. Does he have to have a six-pack? Look, bro, alhamdulillah, I'll take you to the gym and mashallah, no disrespect, but you'll have a hard time keeping up. But that strength is not going to make me be harsh towards people, be cruel towards people, fight unnecessarily. If I'm walking road and someone does something to my missus, God help that person because he's getting banged out.
So that's the thing that I think this is the element of masculinity that is important for you to be able to defend yourself.
Have the tools, bro.
Yeah.
Have the capability.
Like we discussed last time.
When it comes.
Also know
It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
in a war. Yeah,
I like that.
But you know, let me give you another example.
Is that your own saying? Where'd you get that
That's
from?
Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu,
Art of War.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me give you another example of the Prophet ﷺ, because I'm going to keep throwing this in here, because for me that's the frame of masculinity. And apologies, after this I'm going to bring Paul in because we've taken up a lot of time. Now,
No, I'm learning. I'm learning.
It's about knowing when to be gentle, when to be advisory, but when to also show your strengths as well. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu wa arda. Everyone knows about his height, his size, his stature. He was a unit, mashallah, tabarakallah. Now, when he came to Dar al-Arqam, right? The story is so interesting. SubhanAllah, Hamza radiallahu anhu is in the house. The Prophet ﷺ is in the house. The door knocked, they turn around. It's Umar. Panic. It's Umar, like that. The Prophet ﷺ goes, let him in. Let him in. He goes, if he has come for peace, ahlan wa sahlan. But if he has come for something else, I will take his own head off with his own sword. Now, Umar ibn Khattab comes in, and what does the Prophet ﷺ do? Goes right up to him, grabs him by his clothes and goes, what do you want? What do you want, O son of Al-Khattab? What do you want? Now that grips him up.
The scholars also say that because he had a sword around his neck.
He was walking in a way, you don't have the sword out in that particular way in the normal streets unless you're looking for some beef. So they they
say that the Prophet brought him close because he was now disarmed, like he was unable to have that maneuverability to attack. So it was like
he almost knows that.
He had the strategic tools to know how to defuse the situation without him
self-defense.
But the Prophet ﷺ was a champion wrestler. And we know this. He was a champion wrestler. So he knows how to deal with a person.
Grappling and stuff.
And grappling. And so
against Rukana.
So he brings Umar ibn Khattab in like that. Imagine that feeling right now. Everyone else is looking, bro. The Prophet ﷺ, like the Sheikh has said as well, when he went out into the wilderness that time to find what that noise was, the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us how to be a man. There's certain ways. If people trying to overstep the mark, now you take them to task. You don't let them slide on certain things.
So Paul, to round off the physical kind of aspect of masculinity within Islam, any kind of closing remarks or closing thoughts or things that have stood out to you?
Not really. I've been immensely blessed to hear what the brothers are saying. Just two things, really, two very different observations. One, in the West today, is actually surprisingly controversial to say that a man is a biological male. Actually, I know this sounds very basic, and it is, and we're way beyond all that, but still, these fundamental realities. And I remember having a discussion with someone the other day who disagreed with me, and I said, well, this is, it's our DNA. You can't change your DNA simply by putting a dress on if you're a guy. It doesn't work like that. So this is something one has to fight for, but biological basics, because the basis of our gender is our biology, and they're not gender and physicality. They're not separated as they are in our culture. The other thing is, everything I've heard has been very, very wonderful, but not all men, Muslim men and other men, are going to be very masculine in this kind of in-your-face sense, or this very kind of physical, heroic sense. Some men are going to be more gentle. They're going to be more quiet. They're not going to have this almost aggressive attitude. And I'm not saying that attitude is necessarily wrong. It has its time and place, but not all men are like that.
Absolutely.
And men are on a spectrum from one end of the spectrum to the other. And so there's also a danger here that we end up demasculizing, it's not, but men who are actually real men, but are not actually living up to this trope of the heroic struggler who someone goes out with a sword and so on. Not all men are like that. It doesn't mean they're cowards, but they have a different approach. And I just want to stress that not masculinity isn't one thing. And like you said about Speaker's Corner, those of us who go there, we're not physically fighting, but if we are verbally asserting where we are and we're not provoked into acts of violence or revenge, we're holding our own, where we're being tough and so on, that also is a form of,
I say, war.
Masculinity. Well,
that ties into that hadith which I shared, wasn't it? That I mentioned about a strong person is one who can control himself in anger.
Exactly.
So that is a definition of being a strong individual.
Yes, that's true. So I want to put a plea here that men come in different shapes and sizes.
Absolutely, they do.
And this has nothing to do with the feminization of men. This is to do with the normative, healthy form of masculinity. Let us not stress this too much that we end up kind of marginalizing other people.
Can I jump in off the back of that quickly, Zishan, which is and this is why we're so fortunate to have biographies of the Sahaba, because it's exactly that these occasions that we're speaking about, that's when needs must. That's what we're talking about is, the Prophet ﷺ's character went through a different spectrum of behaviors to teach us how to be. And a lot of that time it was gentle and it was loving and it was compassionate. And so when needs must...
المؤمن غر كريم بر كريم.
And is it not an ayah, if I'm not mistaken, that said, or a hadith, I think maybe possibly an ayah that had you been harsh,
ولو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك. If you'd been a harsh individual by heart, then these Sahaba would have gone.
That's always struck me because but most of us who have been that leader would have alienated people by the very virtue of our harshness. But actually,
you see, that's the thing.
It didn't work with him.
Even the Islamic model, because that was the perfect ideal of leadership. The leadership in Islam is actually the model's flipped on its head. The leaders at the top in the Western secular world, but actually the fact is the other way around in Islam, where the leaders are Sayyidul Qawm Khadimuhum, the leader of the people, bro, is the Khadim of the people.
Yes.
He's the leader.
And the leaders that are very harsh, they call them middle management. And middle management, they tend to be harsh because they try to attract people using vinegar. And the distinction is that for you to know if someone is upper management tend to get people via honey. Because they've obviously gone through the system. They understand how it works. You don't ever get your hands dirty.
Yes.
So it's interesting how, because everyone's talking about leadership and there's many books that come out that I've seen on leadership and they're like, oh, you got to imbue psychopathic tendencies into your...
I've read that actually.
And you don't. This is the thing. Look at Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu. They say that his wealth was so much that the ard would rumble from when his caravan would move from one place to another. But yet you would find the most humble and the most, humility.
Sitting amongst even the slaves.
You see, and he's one of the 10 promised Jannah. Subhanallah.
And something that's... Did you finish the point?
Yeah.
What's interesting is people talk about other aspects of women coming from the rib of man, but scholars give the example that it's not the bone that comes from the head, that you keep them on top of your head and you're weighed down by them, and it's not the bone that comes from your foot, that you dominate them, but it's from the heart,
which is
something close to you.
Beautiful.
And similarly, even when I was speaking to people like Artur Beterbiev, who had like 20 KOs, and I mean he is somebody that people saw as the masculine guy, and this is what he was telling me as well, that balance, not too humble and this and that people walk all over you, but not too braggadocious that people think like Floyd Mayweather, this guy's a mug.
So can I quickly come on that? Because when we spoke about the whole red pill movement, this status and women and money and all of this others, and we're talking about the opposite of that, what underpins all of this is arrogance and pride. And that's why it's so dangerous, because the sin of shaitan was what? Was pride. And so what we're doing is we want validation. Look at my big car. Look at my watch. Look at my girl. Look at this. For what? For what? Fir'aun had the same stuff, for he's in the ground.
But we'll come to that, because that is more in the mental aspect of things. Because we're going physical, mental, then spiritual.
All right, let's jump into mental then, innit?
So physical, just to round that off, foods also play a big part when it comes to one's masculinity. Meats, protein, stuff like that. Like if you look even back in the days, people had a carnivorous diet. You didn't have the people that were going out for hunting, going out and hunting leeks and cucumbers, and watermelons. They were going and they were hunting animals and creatures and the likes. And even that, Islam tells us, this again imbues masculinity as well, because technically speaking, you're supposed to, when you reach a certain age, you sacrifice your own animal. And when you sacrifice your own animal, that jijik of, just cutting or attacking or this or that, not done in an aggressive way, but you understand that is also a part of life.
Absolutely.
Just in case your country comes under warfare or whatnot, you're not going to start vomiting at the sight of blood if someone comes for your family. So even if you follow Islam properly and it's preached to you nuanced and properly, you understand that even through these seemingly menial acts, because you only have to sacrifice once a year in Eid al-Adha, and you realize that once a year you understand that
become desensitized to any sort of madness.
Yeah,
like,
to a degree.
when I say madness, I mean like blood and
yeah. It's not that it happens like once every month and a person, you know, becomes, you know, this beast, but it's once a year that a person's like, here's an animal, I feel kind of drawn towards this animal, because you're supposed to technically look after it and then sacrifice it.
But can I I kind of wanted to mention something around this as well, so I'm glad you brought it up. I kind of looked at the deen and I was trying to find, like, where is there any rite of passage for men? And when you look at mythology, for example, or different traditions, there's always this rite of passage that a boy becomes a man. And I was struggling to find it. I was like, where can we find this? And I remember my dad, Allah Arham, telling me a story about when he was young. And this happened to him, where he was around about 14 and his father took him and said, you know, this goat that we had, because we were like farmers in Pakistan. He goes, do you know this goat that we have that you really love? He goes, yeah. He goes, well, we're going to have to sacrifice it. And my dad goes, I remember crying profusely at that thought that I had to do this. And so that, what is actually a real sacrifice is when you genuinely love something and you're able to give. There's a verse in the Quran about that, which is when you can give up something that you love for the sake of Allah. And then the spilling of the blood is not only just to desensitize you from the blood, it also gives you the understanding of, I have the ability to take this life here. And how sacred is this life?
Yeah, but also that nothing can stand between me and my Allah. I'll sacrifice everything for my Allah.
This is it. Yeah. And so to be able
no
to...
No attachment can stand in front of me and my Creator.
And so you have to go through that physically. You have to go through the stress. You have to go through the fear. You have to potentially go through some bad dreams after it's done. You know, all of these things. Thinking, I wonder what that animal's going to think of me now. Because we're humans. We have to understand the human disposition is extremely rich.
You know, it's interesting. I've just gone on. I don't know if you heard this, bro, but it was in Ottoman Turkey that it was a kind of a hukum given from the Khalifa at the time that Jazar, what these butchers, they would every 6 months or so take a sabbatical to go and plant vegetables and do some sort of groundwork, because it's not about just killing life, it's about nurturing.
Absolutely.
So
again,
it's wasat, isn't it? Precisely that. Islam is balance, man. You get me? So it's alhamdulillah, I think the starting point for Muslims, if anyone's watching a non-Muslim, that's their view. So you look at the Prophet ﷺ's character. In his seerah, look at every single applicable way in life. How was he as a husband? How was he as a leader? How was he as this? How was he physically strong? How was he on the battlefield? That is itself for us good enough.
So it's endocrine disruptors. Now, endocrine disruptors, especially in an age that people are becoming more feminized, they don't realize that this is happening through chemicals as well. Through creams, through deodorants, through certain plastics. So it's even covered by The Guardian and things as well, that the more we go to things that aren't natural, putting chemicals on our skin that we don't understand how they've been manufactured in factories and these sorts of things, they're going to cause issues. Trying to stick with cotton clothes, getting things that even when you're using a soap, they say your skin is a big mouth. So everything you put onto it absorbs it. Women putting all this, even it was, I think, the Kardashians, or Paris Hilton, they reached such a level. They said, you know what, we're not going to take the makeup that's given to us by, wherever we're going. We're going to take our own. Right. Even Will Smith's wife, she was, putting on these masks to do with avocado and making their own homemade remedies. Why? Because this is very, very important. All of this stuff is going into your skin. And if you look at these men now wearing makeup and this stuff gets absorbed, and paying attention to your testosterone levels as well. Absolutely. Seeing what makes your testosterone rise, because testosterone is a hormone which is very important for one's masculinity. And you need to know in which situations, if you're at home and there's a lot of, female company, you then have to balance that off with male company. Absolutely right. Having a lot of female is not helpful to you as a man. You need to be around other men. Again, balancing everything, not just saying, no, just around men all the time. No, it's about balancing things, knowing what's lacking and then supplementing it. So there are, of course, many other things we can say about the kind of physical aspect of things. But now let's move on to the mental aspect of things. And this is actually related to how, as men, we maintain friendships. We maintain, even interactions that we have with, people at Speaker's Corner or people that disagree with us, even with our parents, and most importantly, marriages. Yeah, because a lot of marriages are breaking apart because women say that the men are not men. I just can't respect him. Or the men are saying she's too masculine. Yeah, she's imbuing characteristics that I just don't find attractive. And women just will respond by saying, oh, he's just insecure. No, you have to listen to what he's saying and where it's coming from, like the belt example that we were saying. So when it comes to the mental aspect, we've already mentioned, I'll brush over some things that we've already mentioned. Control, yeah? Being in control when we're angry. This is something that the Prophet ﷺ said is a sign of a strong man. Having control. They say a guy driving a car, it's not talented for him to just drive really fast. Anyone can put their foot on the gas and go really fast. But then Formula One drivers are told apart or set apart by the others based on how they then slow down and take the corners. Yeah, it's about control of the vehicle, not just driving 100 miles an hour. Yeah. So we mentioned control. I would also argue emotional stability as well, because a man has primarily been given the responsibility for divorce. Yeah, divorce comes primarily from a man. And many occasions, women have said, give me a divorce, give me a divorce, give me a divorce. Okay, I divorce you. And then afterwards they go, oh, Imam, I was angry. And then the Imam responds, who the hell ever gives a divorce when they're happy?
Exactly.
Of course it's going to come when you're angry. Yeah. So now the question is that I would say, if I'm ever, speaking to these brothers, read and understand the psychology, the psychological aspect of what it means to be a human being, conflict resolution, because as a man, you will be given the reins of that relationship. And if you are not responsible, if you don't understand how your psyche works, how are you going to be responsible for a woman and for children? These little lotare, bags of flesh that are just flailing about. Yeah. And what happens is that, unfortunately and sadly, in a lot of cultures, when the boy, I'll call him the boy, the boy is frankly not pulling his weight, he said, oh, just get him married. She'll fix him. Now that then puts undue pressure on that relationship, where she's going to see him from a position that he's not able to protect and provide, so she loses respect for said individual. So understanding how the psyche works, know thyself, know yourself. That's also very important. But emotional stability, there was a book that I was reading, and they actually summarized emotional stability to three things. This is the sign of an emotional stable individual. One is you don't take everything personally. Now, if you're in an argument with somebody and that person is able to understand what's personal and what's to do with the actual discussion debate, that's a sign of an emotionally stable person. Number two, permanent. That you don't think that just because said thing has happened, it's going to be like that forever. You're able to understand the temporal nature of said issue that's going on. It could be the death of a loved one, it could be whatnot. Obviously, you're going to feel sad or whatnot, but you realize that, this is not permanent. And the other thing is, they call it pervasive, which is compartmentalizing your problems. You've had an argument at home. Now you're going to work. You don't start lashing out at the people that you're at work with because they're clueless. And many, especially if you look at our parents, yeah, they were able to compartmentalize this because they came in the UK at such a time that people were looking at Muslims. This is how Muslims are. What happened at home had to stay at home. Then they were able to go out and go, hello, Larry. Yes, how's it going? And yes, we're fine and blah, 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 blah. You know, separating that thing. So being able to compartmentalize what's going on at home with what's going on at work, or even what's going on at home with Speaker's Corner. If sometime I feel like, you know what, I haven't got my sleep, I'm not up to it, I'm not going to go there and misrepresent the religion now. Oh, Zishan, you're a bit on edge and this. Why was I there in the first place? Certain brothers, they're like, bro, if I'm here and someone says this about the Prophet, bro, I'm like, why are you here then?
Yeah.
Why are you here? Yeah. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Straight.
Yeah. Now, Paul, when it comes to these sorts of things, what are your kind of what kind of stood out to you, and what do you have to?
Well, I feel as if I'm having a wonderful seminar, and I'm learning some wonderful bits of wisdom and life experiences and stories about the Sahaba. It's been a great education. I don't know. I was just reflecting everything you've said about my own life. I think all you said was very, very helpful. But for me, it's all about maturing as a human being. It's about learning lessons. I usually learn lessons the hard way through doing things wrong, because then the pain that results is going to be there in the mind rather than just the theoretical principle.
But Paul, that's resilience. That's mental resilience.
It's the school of hard knocks, yeah. And so I think a lot, and also something, I don't know how relevant this is, but as men, as human beings, we do change simply as we get older, actually. Things do change. I remember when I was in my late teens, early 20s, just struggling with this or that. That is more or less gone now, or has become a lot gentler and quieter, not because of some virtue, but simply by one gets older and these things tend to balance out by the mystery of being human, actually. So that there are struggles that seem to be particularly for when you're very young or you're a teenager, and things in later life, actually. So we don't, as you say, this will pass. One of the things, this is temporary, and indeed life is temporary, but also the struggles that we have tend to evolve and change now as we get older as well. So that's kind of a relief. I don't struggle about some of the things anymore. There are new struggles now to do with other things, which maybe money and arrogance or whatever, which then we have to deal with, but they're not quite the same as before, really. But we keep on mentioning Speaker's Corner. I think on balance, and I'm a hypocrite for saying this, but on balance, Speaker's Corner is a very toxic, nasty place. And most normal people shouldn't be going there. Not because Dawah is wrong, Dawah is essential, but because it's such a horrible place. I mean, people behave badly. Everyone, most people, one or two exceptions, like Nazam, for example. I don't mind mentioning names because we all know who he is. He's a wonderful brother, who never gets riled, or is always very, not passive, but he never winds anyone up ever. He's always beautifully behaved. But for most of us, it's a real challenge to be there. It's a toxic place, and I go there because it's just down the road and it's fun, and sometimes you have good conversations. But we shouldn't be encouraging people in general to go there because it's so awful. There are some wonderful exceptions like you and so on who can handle it and do good there. But it takes an unusual person to succeed and flourish and not get tarnished by that experience. So we shouldn't be holding up Speaker's Corner as some kind of place to go. It's
absolutely
a dreadful place.
Now I know you guys were waiting to kind of come in because the mental aspect is, a much neglected aspect, and this is where kind of prophetic masculinity really kind of comes in when we're talking about perfecting one's character. I mean, although that kind of overlaps with the spiritual aspect of things as well. So, I mean, what have you got in mind pertaining the kind of mental things that you think are part of masculinity that, say, don't get mentioned that much?
Okay, so to rephrase your question, so what are some things in Islam that give us masculinity from a spiritual perspective?
From a mental perspective. It could overlap with spiritualism.
Well, okay, one of the things is that understanding that this world is a temporary place. So it's not only about focusing just purely on money, you see. So with the masculine view that's being presented, that in order for you to be a masculine man and success, you have to have money. Well, how about Stoicism? Can that not be masculine as well?
Fantastic. That was one of the points.
So it's like,
tell us more about that.
Well, the Stoicism is kind of like in the most simplest form is not to reject the world, but not to be so beguiled by its apparent beauty and be sucked into it. That you can be basically very content with very little and be happy with yourself. But that comes from a place of knowing your own true strength. Yeah. If all my respect is based on external things, cars, house, money, and so on, well, where am I in this equation? And that's why sometimes it could be possible. And I'm not saying everyone who was having these views lacks something psychologically, but what are they compensating for?
So more specifically pertaining Stoicism, as a philosophy, it says keep emotion out of it. Yeah. Now that is very useful as a solution, because many people nowadays the term is used, snowflakes. Every little thing becomes an issue. Yeah, we're emotionally charged and I'm offended by this, or he shouldn't have said this. Two of the biggest boxers that were fighting was Artur Beterbiev and Bivol. Yeah, and Bivol was in an interview and he was asked that, you seem very emotionally detached. And he said, being emotionally detached, being emotionally attached is a weakness. Yeah. Now, when you are married and anytime something happens, I'm not saying do this all the time, because Stoicism, of course, has its extremes because it divorces emotion completely. Yeah. But as a man, if the woman that will be more emotionally inclined, something happens, she's looking to you for emotional stability. So Stoicism does come in. You don't emotionally react to everything. Like Aisha radiallahu anha, she was given something, she broke the plate. The Prophet did not react angrily in front of everyone and cause a scene. That's Stoicism. You keep your emotion, you're able to control it, and you're able to utilize and create a lesson or a learning experience from that at the right time. You don't have to react to everything emotionally, like we're talking about Speaker's Corner and the likes. Like that in itself could be a weakness. So that aspect of Stoicism, and there's that famous emoji where it's like a guy with a rock face. Yeah, people mention that, Khalid.
Yeah, so in psychoanalysis, we've got something called the puer aeternus, which is like the forever boy, or the man child, as it were. So you've got a man, fully grown man, but he still has the tendencies of a boy. And what does a boy want? Wants fun, wants games, wants excitement, wants a rush, wants dopamine over discipline. Whereas a man has more of a structured outlook, more of a strategic outlook, and that's been developed through discipline. Now, when you look at the deen, what does it teach you? It teaches you discipline. It teaches you that you need to pray 5 times a day. You need to pray at specific times. That was a prime example right there. We're in the middle of a podcast. We're in the middle of doing something, but you were like, I actually have a duty that I need to fulfill. If I don't fulfill it now, I'm going to miss the time. So
for the people that are watching, the reason why I did that, because it's your house. I can't go to any other room. And because there were audio issues at the beginning, so I was running around just sorting everything out. But meaning
the discipline was such that this act is so important to me that I have to get it done, despite being in front of people whilst other people are talking. I have to get this done. That's discipline, right? The deen teaches you that level of discipline. When you can have discipline, what this underpins is your ability to now say, I need to work out on a specific day, or I need to avoid certain foods. I now have the ability to fast for 30 days in the month of Ramadan and be, and shun away those things which were desires for me, those dopamine kicks. I can settle those down when I'm asked to settle those down. So being stoic, detaching from emotion at specific times, I say specific times because I think emotion is hugely important as well. That comes from being disciplined. It comes from being able to say, on this really cold day, I'm going to make wudu and I'm going to walk to the masjid.
And discipline is something that could be instilled from a very small age. Like, yes. I don't know if you guys have heard of the marshmallow experiment. No, there's different variations of it, but you put like a box of marshmallows in front of a child and you leave the room. There's cameras there. Oh yeah. And you tell the child, don't eat until I come back. And there's some children that eat it, some children that don't eat it, and they then extrapolated that, and they realized that the children that didn't eat it later on in life, they ended up becoming more law-abiding and
Deferred
more
gratification.
deferred gratification.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
Those kids that ate it, they later on they were,
Impulse control.
they had issues.
So going back to that dopamine thing, constant thrill seeking.
And what we're living in a time now where people just want ease over effort. So there's dopamine over discipline, and there's ease over effort, right? And so when
Which
you
is a
have
mad
that,
toxic combination, bro.
it's and the thing is,
and that's
we're-
why I feel. Sorry, while try your train of thought. Keep it, and that's why you got a lot of youths nowadays that are literally they got 16-year-old and they got in their entrepreneur. Waking up at 12 o'clock eating paratha that mum's cooking. Bro, what entrepreneur are you doing, bro?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
No.
Yeah.
So the other point, I mean, discipline is fantastic, and our religion instills that from its kind of basic tenets. Fasting in the month of Ramadan for 30 days, praying 5 times a day, like we were discussing.
But it's unconscious, Zishan. So it's building those habits.
Yes.
It's building that structure in a human being.
Yes.
Practically.
Practically.
There was stories of the Haba'ib in Yemen, for example, where the mothers would wake up at the time of Tahajjud to feed their children. Just so that child gets used to being up at that time. That being up at that time means I'm going to get something good from it.
SubhanAllah, that's amazing.
So they habitually became used to praying Tahajjud from these habits. But this is what I mean. It's unconscious. It's just there. It forms part of who you are. But that forming of part of who you are is now in competition with things like dopamine, with things like I want money, with things like red pill, with things like a distorted and warped image of what masculinity is. And that's why we have to find these solutions in our own deen for them.
So
we have all of them.
So as we're flying through the solutions, if there's anything that you guys want to jump in on, feel free to kind of interrupt me.
Well, all I'm going to do is mention I'm glad you brought up the word discipline and one of those things, because literally I'm looking at my disciplined self and I can't stop looking at that clock. And I'm thinking, well, mate, look, I already said I need to duck out by a certain time. So someone might think, hold on, 1 minute he's here, 1 minute he's not. What, didn't he pray namaz too? So that's why I want to make it clear that I'm going to be leaving as well. But just on that final note about discipline, I think it's part of being a man is being able to, that thing, deferred gratification, being able to kind of not always give in to temptations. Is what I'm trying to say. Being able to control, have self-control. Is very important.
So,
for being a man.
another point that, again, these are things that need to be imbued, ideally from a small age.
This is where parents play a big part.
Yes, absolutely.
The parenting has to be more
present.
It has to be present. So I know you have authoritarian, dismissive, and so it needs to be kind of very hands-on, loving, caring parenting, having strong boundaries, but also love and care as well.
Yes.
We refer to that as authoritative.
So one other things that need to be developed from a young age is this concept of bravery as well. Bravery is something that, especially, as a man traverses life, they will have to incur this, because anytime war or anything happens, it's going to be the man that gets put forward.
Absolutely.
Someone comes into your house and you hear some rustling or whatnot, you're not going to send the wife forward or, the 7-year-old kid. You're going to go there, and hopefully your room will have a baseball bat in the corner that you can take with you. I mean, these sorts of things, even if we're living in the West, can't have a gun or anything, we need to make sure you know where your baseball bat is, you're able to defend your family, and what to do in that scenario.
And that's why it's important. Sorry to interrupt and say this, but it's important for people to be able to go to some classes and learn some of this stuff. When I was younger, we lived in a very racist area, you get me? We had time when, I saw my dad come home sometimes full of blood, running out, baseball bat. We saw some mad stuff. So from a young age, my dad made sure that we went to some karate club first. Then I joined a proper boxing gym, bro. It was raw.
2-3 years in Dagestan and forget.
As well as there, 2-3 years, send him. Exactly that.
That's
but it doesn't have to be that extreme. Just in as part of the kind of the weekly activity. I would go a step further and say girls need to learn self-defense now. Because girls are going to be getting violated if they don't know how to defend themselves.
The primary kind of prey for the far-right thugs are hijabis and niqabis.
But on that note, if you give me ijazah, inshallah, I'm going to make a move. And I would love to have mentioned my book here.
Do you want to just do it?
Do you know what? I think I will, man. Why not? I think I'm going to shout this. And people might say, what's my man bringing the book segment now? But it's this one here, The Rise and Fall of Muslims, Islamic History by Saeed Akbar Abadi. There's a common trend that he notices within the rise and fall of societies, and that is the love of wealth and the love of power.
Yeah.
And he said that if you look, whether it's And he cites many families, many dynasties, and he said that a constant recurring theme that exists is this attachment to worldly pleasures, love for money, and just literally love of kursi and authority.
Yeah.
And this is brought about the destruction. And he gives an example from the Ayyubids and the Mamluks and so on and so forth. It's a fantastic book. And I would, for some people who are passionate about the rise and fall of Muslims and so on, it's a great book to read.
Mm-hmm.
But inshallah, you gentlemen carry on. And on that note, inshallah, we'll speak soon, inshallah.
Allah barik feek, yeah.
All right. So another aspect of bravery is that, again, this is a cultural thing. From a very young age, we make our kids afraid of dogs. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And this has shown, I mean, as you're not afraid of dogs, are you?
Well, no, brought up here in England as a non-Muslim. No,
there you go.
Well, no, some dogs are pretty horrible.
well,
So it's not like
obviously the
indiscriminate
pit bulls.
liking of dogs. Chihuahuas are okay, although watch your ankles. But it's Great Danes, you've got to be, or whatever. Rottweilers. Yeah.
So what? I mean, when you see Muslims around dogs and they're like, oh,
Yeah, I've seen that.
what impression does that give you?
Well, it's not a great look, particularly if it's an overreaction. You know, mothers say to their children, "Oh, there's a dog! Quickly!" You know, as if there's something terrible. You know, normally dogs are not like that. And I know there's issues to do with whether or not they're clean or unclean. There's different schools of thought. The Maliki schools like different from the others and so on. But no, we shouldn't give this kind of impression of fear of dogs. Because then we'll grow up fearing them, and we shouldn't be fearing them.
And another thing that as mothers, because they're the first madrasa of the child, obviously the father can try to be present, but he's not going to be as present as a mother. And this is something, I mean, we tell, our family members as well, that as a mother, even if you're scared of the spider, this is something you're going to have to slowly overcome.
Yes.
Try to overcome it. Otherwise, your child will learn that fear from you.
Yeah.
They don't know what that thing is. When they see it, they look at you, oh, scared, I need to be scared of that.
Yes.
And then that becomes imbued within them. So,
and so it's about role modeling. So role modeling is really important. So the parent or the caregiver gives the impression of being the protector at all times to this child, and the child looks up to that protector. And if you can't fulfill that role, it then leaves a very disjointed understanding for that child to then take on. So even with the spider example, right? I've got two little girls, and they were very similar around spiders and things like that. Oh my God, there's a spider in my room. So I'd come in first, take it with a tissue and go, look, this is what I've done. Here it is. Oh, get it away from me. Mm-hmm. Now, the next time I've come in there, I've done it and I've gone, look, no sound, just look. And they've looked at it. They're a little bit scared, but they're quiet now because they can see that I'm fully in control of this situation. They know that, hey, Dad's not scared. He's not moving around. What's making me do that? They ask themselves these questions. And then when there's a smaller one, for example, I got my littlest one to do it. Get the tissue. I'm behind you. Get the spider. If anything happens, I'll sort it out. But you try it. And once they overcome that fear, it releases so many neurotransmitters in the brain that they now feel this sense of worth. They self-validate. They know that they're now brave enough to do something. They've overcome a hurdle. That is introjected into themselves as a very positive trait for them to take on. The dogs thing, I can't go without mentioning the dogs thing. As you know, Zishan, I absolutely love dogs. And I've worked with many big, powerful breeds. And I thank my brother Isa, who, he's introduced me to this world of big, large protection dogs. There is so much we can learn from dogs, especially big, large, powerful breeds. Dogs require leadership. If they don't have leadership, they will then look to control the situation themselves. And how do they go about doing that? Barking, running, potentially even biting if they need to. Once they can see a frame, a masculine frame in front of them, once they are given instruction, once they are stopped or prevented from certain things until they're ready to take it, like food, for example, that impulse, they then become pliable in your hands. This very strong, 90-kilo dog who is capable of tearing you to shreds chooses not to. Why? Because you have that sense, you have that frame, you have that persona about you. And this is what we need to start doing even in reality. You don't need to, my dad always said, a lion doesn't need to roar for you to know it's a lion. it should be seen in your aura. And
Yeah,
who you
you
are.
don't have to tell them I'm a high value man, I'm a masculine
Do you
man.
understand?
People
Yeah.
should see that from you.
Should see it from you.
your actions.
That's
rather,
it.
not even like the big biceps or whatnot.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a dog. I mean, Islamically, we're told obviously to interact with horses, with camels, and with goats. Like all prophets, they were shepherds, so they learned how to shepherd goats. I mean, one scholar made the distinction between sheep and a goat. Sheep seem to be more kind of placid and more kind of docile compared to say the goat. The goats are very skinny and they got the horns and they're very agile as well. So to control goats, it's interesting because it's as if they were being prepared and made ready for their role to look after groups and groups of people. And similarly, this is, I mean, one of the scholars made a good point as well, and this moves on to independence. This is another mental characteristic that we need to imbue into our children, and we need to imbue in ourselves as well. Not constantly relying on somebody else. Yes, there will be times where we do need, affection. We need, a shoulder to cry on. It's best to do that with another man that understands your issues, as opposed to somebody like your wife. Sometimes there is, you can do it, but certain things that if you do it to her and she thinks this is a guy who's supposed to protect and provide, then it reduces their confidence in yourself. So independence, the scholar was saying this, that pertaining being independent, some parents like to maintain control over their children. Don't talk back. Don't challenge what I've said. Don't. Now, when that happens, the scholar made such a good point. He goes, they're doing that with you. They're not questioning your authority, which to a level is good. But if to a higher level, now they're not going to do that outside.
Yeah.
Somebody else now tells them something. They're more likely to accept what they say, especially if it comes from authority. It's actually a fallacy. They call it the fallacy of appealing to authority. That even, I think it was Miller's experiment or something, that if somebody in a white coat tells you to do something, even if it's causing harm to somebody, you're more likely to follow it because it's coming from an authority. And this is something that we need to imbue independence. That is that authority that's giving you that lesson. Is it a good lesson?
Yeah, and this is also, it comes from humanistic therapy where it's called introjected values. So if a child has been told to be quiet when they were younger, or they've been told to, oh, you're too loud, you sing too loud, or whatever it might be, this will then almost cull that child's ability to shine and be how they wish to be, especially in adulthood. And that's when it turns up most, where people lose their voice. They don't know how to set boundaries. They let people walk all over them, for example. They become too agreeable. And so by giving somebody a voice, even early on, I encourage my children to do. When we talk about even big subjects, I'll turn around to like my 9-year-old, go, what do you think? And it started off with her going, I don't know, to I've actually got a space to share now. Let me try and give an opinion on something. And it's listened to and it's heard and it's welcomed. That will now hopefully, inshallah, give her the ability to say, you know what, my voice is relevant. I can speak as long as I know what I'm talking about. Let me contribute. Let me share. And that's the thing, contribution and sharing. This is what, part of being a Muslim is that. What is your contribution to humanity? What is your contribution to society, to your community? If you're doing nothing, then you're useless. You have to be contributing, because it's those contributions that are going to serve you when you're dead. Not the Bugatti, not the women. None of that is going to avail you when you're gone. But your contributions of good works to others, that's what's going to help you in the long run.
Paul, legacy, part of masculinity. What do you think? Do you think Khal is just gassing, or you think there's...
He never gasses. No, he's always words of wisdom. No,
well, I don't know. You do sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah,
Gas sometimes comes out.
Please stop sharing my personal information.
No, I don't have anything to add to that. No.
So I would agree with that. I mean, legacy is something, Habib Nurmagomedov keeps talking about legacy, and he's an MMA fighter, and he, they say man incurs 2 deaths. One is when they physically die, and the other is when the last person to remember their name. That's why I can't remember where I was reading or watching this, and they were like, that's why a lot of people focus on their legacy. Yeah. And they name benches and things after them, because especially in a secular society, it's keeping the person's memory alive. It's as if they have another life. So yeah, a lot of people do focus on their legacy and how, you know, things will carry on. And we've got the concept called sadaqatul jariyah as well.
Yes, exactly.
Ongoing sadaqah, you know, performing hajj for the people that have passed away as well. But another thing that, of course, I think we've, throughout our discussion, we've talked about the spiritual aspect, which is following the prophetic sunnah. And one other things I think that we've also kind of mentioned is tazkiyatun nafs, purification of the soul. Yeah, and we mentioned that in passing, to do with purification of, you know, and managing one's anger, perfecting one's character. And there's many books that have been written on this by Ibn al-Jawzi and, you know, many other scholars as well. And most importantly, you guys mentioned as well, not being submissive to one's ego. Yeah. And that's what the red pill and these guys tend to kind of highlight, which is, give into that and make sure that you're the best in that or whatnot. Now here's the thing. When it comes to, and I mean, Sheikh's gone now, but even if you look at certain scholars that are given that kind of respect now, but they're kind of seen, and we mentioned this last time, they're kind of seen as, they were just faqirs and that's all they did. But Imam Shafi'i, Imam Shafi'i was somebody who excelled in archery, and there's many references I've got for this, but Amr ibn Suwaid said, Shafi'i told me, my passion was in archery and seeking knowledge. Now this correlates with Salahuddin, who primarily wanted to become a seeker of knowledge, but eventually ended up becoming a leader, but still had that love for seeking knowledge. Oops, back to safety. Okay. I excelled in archery to the point where I would hit the mark 10 out of 10 times. But I remained silent in seeking knowledge. So I said, by Allah, your status in knowledge is greater than your status in archery. So Imam Shafi'i is not somebody that people talk about this aspect of his life. They talk about his fiqh. Oh, Imam Shafi'i holds this opinion or that opinion. In fact, they say even with regards to Ibn Taymiyyah, Al-Bazar said when Ibn Taymiyyah used to ride the horse, he would go into the rows of enemies like the brave warrior. He was firm against them and would say takbir. He would make the enemy tired because of his attacks. He would enter into the army of enemies as if there is no fear of death. Al-Dhahabi said, and I think this one is with regards to the teacher of Imam Bukhari. It says, the teacher of Imam Bukhari, the mujahid and hero in battlefields, Abu Ishaq al-Sumari, Al-Dhahabi said about him, I heard him saying while driving out his sword, I know it with certainty that I have killed 1,000 Turks through this sword. And were it not for my fear that it would be an innovation, then I would order people to bury the sword with me. Now, of course, you know, there were battles and there's context and there's this and that. But the point is that there are many aspects of history of our Salaf that doesn't get mentioned that much. And maybe that's why people are now looking towards other kind of isms and schisms. And what we need to do is we need to fill this void. Understand what's missing.
And this is, I'll go back to the same thing, is dopamine over discipline. Which is, you know, do I want the quick fix or am I going to take the long road? And it's the long road that leads to victory, essentially. You mentioned about some of the Salaf, for example. Again, I'm going to come back to Sayyidina Ali, right? Sayyidina Ali was called Asadullah al-Ghalib, the victorious lion of Allah, right? And he was given a name Al-Qarar, which means to go in and out of the enemies like a bolt, like a thunderbolt, just in and out of the enemies, just smashing them and coming back out. But the Prophet ﷺ also called him Al-Qadi al-Ummah, the judge of the Ummah, meaning his wisdom and his knowledge was such, and wisdom and knowledge only comes from being disciplined, from being able to take two sides of a story, from being able to be analytical, to be able to be intelligent, super intelligent. So why I say these things is because the aspect of masculinity is to allow us to be the holistic man. to encompass all of these traits within ourselves. Now, we will naturally lean towards something which we're better at. Some people are fantastic at debates. Some people fantastic at fighting. Some people fantastic at art. Some at, literature or making things with their hands. You have a specialty that you can focus on, and you can become great in what you can do while still tending to other things. Part of my coaching, I do this thing where I send out a survey to my clients, and they fill this in, and it kind of comes up with their core strengths. And these core strengths are what you are most likely to excel in. And what it usually does is it marries up with things that you really believe in, things that you have a passion for, etc. And you're more likely to do something successful if your core strengths are at work as opposed to something else. And so taking that, understanding that, knowing who you are, and then applying that into the real world gives you a sense of self-validation, not an external validation. So this is why I say people are performing masculinity, because they're performing this dominance whilst receiving external validation. That's a very weak man.
All right, so we'll go on to the book recommendations now. The book that I'm recommending is called Forbidden Prophecies. Anyone that's in dawah or anyone that's in apologetics, whenever you're using GoRap, which is first you talk about God, oneness, revelation, then prophethood. When you're talking about prophethood, one of the evidences of prophethood are prophecies. And Abu Zakaria has done a fantastic job talking about prophecies of people of other faiths and ideologies. And then he talks about prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ and how they are indicative that he is only, somebody that indicates or that is worthy of being called a prophet. So Forbidden Prophecies is free to download as well. You can get online, or you can get a hard copy like mine. Paul?
Yeah, my recommendation, I mentioned it before, is the commentary on the 11th Contentions by Abdul Hakim Murad, otherwise known as Tim Winter from Cambridge University. If you want to, anyone interested in modernity, the modern world, and the kind of forces that we encounter, and looking at it from an Islamic point of view, this is a very high-end kind of intellectual book. It's not easy reading, but hey, this is a challenging book and it should be read if you want to read a top-level Islamic scholar from the West talk about modernity. Highly recommended.
I didn't know he had any books.
Yeah.
Is that one of many, or is that...
Just a handful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Khalid?
Yeah, so this book, I was going to share it at a later date, but I think due to the subject, I think it's pertinent for me to share it now. This is probably my favorite book ever.
No way.
It's the book that transformed me beyond belief. It was an extremely transformative book for me, and I go to it often. It's called The Clarification of Noble Character by Habib Umar bin Hafiz, Hafidhullah. They are from the Habaib in Yemen, and so in a place called Tarim. This book, the Habaib have something that they like to say, which is brevity is the best policy, where keeping things short, concise, but really powerful is part of prophetic character. This book is really short in terms of the chapters are like 3 or 4 pages per chapter, but it puts the attributes of the Prophet ﷺ into practice. So it's, what does noble character look like? How did patience show up for the Prophet ﷺ? What did bravery look like for the Prophet ﷺ? And it really speaks to the heart. So I encourage people, if they can take this, reflect on it and refine from it, to really get this book.
So guys, we were obviously trying to cover so much information, and we were trying to keep it brief as possible. This is a topic that requires an entire series, frankly, and each part needs to be, unpacked, and we weren't able to do that for every part. Inshallah, you guys have benefited. Let us know in the comments, and maybe we might even do a part 2, but inshallah, make sure you spread it. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum.